Hello everybody. So today is going to be a little bit of a fast video. This is a super easy fly to tie, but it's one of my favorites, probably my favorite midge emerger for deep water, especially out of the drift boat on the San Juan. It's a chocolate foam wing emerger. So I've started the thread. Any rust brown thread or a darker brown thread will do. I tend to like the rust brown thread better. The hook is a Daiichi 1120. It's a 2x strong heavy scud hook. I've had other scud hooks bend out, so I use the Daiichi 1120 probably more than any other hook. So I've tied the thread in, and what I'm going to do is take my ultra wire in extra small copper, and I'm going to tie that in. I've showed in other videos where I just do the loose tie-in. I use a lot of good thread control to tie that wire in on the other side of the shank. So I'm going to grab that wire, and it's kind of parallel with the shank now. And then as I'm tying down, I'm making consecutive wraps, so they're touching each other. They're covering the wire, covering the hook shank, but they're not building up a lot of bulk. I don't want this fly to be very bulky. The size that I like to tie this in the most is size 22, so with a fly that small, every thread wrap makes a difference. I also don't like to tie down the whole shank, the round shank, unless I'm tying like a shrimp or a caddis. So you can see I've stopped where the thread sort of hangs at the bottom, the back of the barb. And then I'm going to take my thread after I've wrapped that wire in. I'm just going to make touching turns again, making sure to cover up all of the wire and the previous thread wraps. But I'm not going to build up a lot of bulk on this fly. I'm going to take my wire and super tight all of my flies. Most of my flies don't use like head cement or epoxy. I think that can kind of detract from flies. And I'm going to start my ribbing, and I'm pulling this wire fairly taut as I'm ribbing this fly, taking care to make this ribbing evenly spaced out. Not only is it taking pride in your own craftsmanship, but I think it looks better if the ribs are evenly spaced out. Then what most people do is they're going to tie that wire off, and then they're going to come in here and clip this. And what happens sometimes when you hit your hemos or when the fish is teeth hit the wire, it comes undone. So instead what I'm going to do is wrap the wire back, and I'm going to take a couple of turns over the wire. And what that does is it's locked in that wire. That wire is not going anywhere. It can break when you take the hook out of a fish, but it's definitely not going to just slide out. That wire is in there for good. So we've got a nicely segmented body, hardly a thorax built up yet. And I'm going to take my 1mm closed cell foam. So this is craft foam. It's 1 millimeter thick, and then I just cut it into like 1.5 millimeter wide strips. So it's fairly square. And I'm going to take this in, and actually I'll show you the easiest way to do it. Tie in a bunch of foam like this. It's easy to grab. So you're going to tie this in on the top, and first couple of wraps not too tight because your thread can actually cut the foam. But once you come down here, really bind that foam down. And then when you come in here and clip, a lot of times it's hard to get the foam cut so close that you end up with a big ball there. So grab this foam instead and just rip it off. And what that does is it creates a smaller piece of foam that you have to cover with the thread. So I'm going to build my head. You can throw some dubbing on here. On 80% of the flies that I do, I don't use any dubbing. All I'm going to do is build that head with thread, come in with a whip finish, and do a couple of 3 or 4 turn whip finishes. What I'm doing is I'm locking the thread, but I'm also building that little bit of a head at the same time. Every thread wrap matters when you're tying small little flies. Come in, clip that tag end real short. I don't like the wings to be too long on this fly. I like to come in the center, lay my scissors on the center of the shank, and then cut. So it's probably 1/4 of the shank long on that wing length. This fly is probably, like I said, one of my best flies for the boat, in chocolate with copper wire rib, black with silver wire rib, even chocolate with silver wire rib, and gray with silver wire rib. So those are the variations that you can tie. It can be tied with a tail too, and it'll imitate more of a Baetis pattern, which is great fly to tie. But try this fly out. Super easy. It's getting to be super popular in Colorado. Definitely a really good fly on the San Juan in New Mexico. Thanks, everybody.